Dear APEC leaders, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to everyone present and salam sejahtera. Firstly, please allow me to convey a very warm welcome to this fully virtual APEC CEO Dialogue 2020 and thank you for making time to be with us today. CIMB is very proud to be a principal partner of this prestigious event. We are honored to be in the presence of highly respected global leaders and excited to be part of the conversations which will touch upon the agenda of inclusive growth, innovation, digital future, climate change, and other pressing issues amidst the challenging global environment caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, I'm grateful to be given the opportunity to introduce the next global leader who will be speaking about the future of global growth. Our speaker is currently the third Prime Minister of Singapore, successfully leading the country since 2004. Prior to becoming the Prime Minister, he had also been the Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister of Singapore. He's a true blue and proud Singaporean with a distinguished track record as a leading regional and global leader. Under his strong leadership, Singapore has continued to solidify its position as an economic powerhouse and a leading global hub for trade, finance, and more recently, the new economy. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce His Excellency Mr. Lee Hsien Loong, the Prime Minister of Singapore, in conversation with Mr. Ho Meng Kit, CEO of the Singapore Business Federation. Thank you.
Welcome. My name is Ho Meng Kit, the CEO of the Singapore Business Federation and a member of APEC Singapore. We warmly welcome Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong to the APEC CEO Dialogue 2020. Welcome, PM Lee.
Good morning.
Morning. I want to start a little bit more broadly in this dialogue with you, talking about COVID-19. It has really immensely affected not only the way we work, the way we live. We're talking to you about how it has affected even personally. As a leader managing COVID, what is your sense of the impact of COVID on the global economy, and how have you as a leader found it easy or difficult to manage COVID-19 in the last, 10 months that we had this crisis?
Well, this year the impact has been enormous because the international travel has closed down, the tourism business is at a halt, and many countries have had to lock down or have various forms of circuit breaker to tamp down the COVID-19 in their economy, in their societies, and that has had a massive impact on their economies, on jobs, on earnings, on the confidence and outlook of the population at a time of great uncertainty. In Asia, many of the countries have brought the COVID-19 under control, are now gradually trying to open up again, but very, very cautious because they're very concerned about the rebound, which you can see happening in Europe, you can see happening in America. And because of that, although things have stabilized, the outlook is very, very guarded. Numerically, next year will be better than this year because next year, hopefully we avoid a lockdown and hopefully the vaccines start to come online and gradually things begin to come back to normal. But I think that it will take quite some time and there are many risks along the way. And that's how we are treating it in Singapore.
Right. You mentioned about Asia being able to manage the crisis a little bit better in terms of stabilizing the domestic situation of the COVID-19. In Europe, for example, and in America, they had locked down and then they have opened their economy during the summer. I think their economy was less affected, but now they are into the second wave. Whereas in Asia, I think we were a little bit more conservative. We locked down, but that has greater economic impact. Do you think that the Asia way of managing COVID-19 is the way to go?
We don't know. Time will tell because the battle is far from over. So far, we are trying our best to keep our guard up and to keep the enemy at bay. You can't keep him out altogether, but when you see cases popping up in our society and our community, we try our best to knock them out before they can become a big cluster, and a big cluster can become a major outbreak. But we don't believe we have won, because firstly, within our community, you don't know where it may be hiding and it can pop up again. It's a very wily bug and very, very hard to eradicate. Secondly, we can't keep our borders completely closed forever. There has to be traffic, there has to be business, people need to travel, and therefore we are exposed to the outside world. And COVID-19 is all over the world. And so we must expect cases to keep on coming in, and we have to be vigilant in dealing with them when they pop up. I think that we are trying very hard to avoid having a second outbreak in a big way and having to have a second circuit breaker or a second lockdown. I think the psychology on the population, if we had to do that, would be a very big impact. People will be discouraged, maybe demoralized, certainly will be angsty and fractious. It's not easy to maintain solidarity in the face of a threat which keeps on being there, going away and coming back again, going away and coming back again. So we are trying our best to avoid that roller coaster.
Is this made more difficult because, as a national leader, the toolkit that you have to tackle the crisis is mostly national? In a sense that were you able to call on multilateral international toolkit and collaboration to manage the crisis?
Well, the scientific collaboration is international. I mean, people are researching COVID all over the world. Papers are being published. Everybody's reporting on their experiences, what is working, what is not working, where the unexpected pitfalls are. And we're all trying to learn from one another. So that part is international. In terms of international cooperation, looking after our borders, working out safe travel arrangements, I think there's a good amount of that. In terms of medical arrangements, like planning for what to do when vaccines become available.
Right.
WHO is coordinating arrangements internationally so that you can have the vaccines available even to countries which can't quite afford them, and so that you have a rational distribution to the places where it can make the most difference to the global pandemic. That means the most vulnerable people and the first responders should get it first. And we are participating in those initiatives. We've made a contribution, and we are also what's called Friends of the COVAX.
Right.
Which means working together with other countries and with WTO to sort out these arrangements and to make sure that those who need it are not deprived of vaccines because they can't afford it.
We had, in the earlier part of the crisis, disruption to supply chain.
Yes.
Particularly for medical supplies and essential medical supplies.
Yes.
So
gloves, masks,
it was
PPE.
disappointing for us to see.
Well, what to do? It's a scramble. Everybody is short, and every country bends the rules as far as it can, and sometimes even further, in order to grab and get first claim on stuff which is within their control.
Were you disappointed that the WTO didn't play a part or regional organization didn't play a part in making sure that those rules are observed?
Well, I think it's very hard for a supranational organization to make sure that the rules are observed, because finally governments are sovereign. And if the government decides it wants to do something within its own territory, there's not much you can do about it. But there is certainly a lot more scope for cooperating between governments, because the next time it happens, we will need to work together better. And if each time we are going to scramble for PPE and for gloves and for masks, then each one of us must set up factories to make PPE and manufacture gloves and masks, and stockpile them, and it's an awfully expensive business. So within ASEAN, we are talking about possibilities of cooperating to stockpile, to ensure supplies of these essential items in an emergency. But of course, the test will be, will it work when the emergency comes? I hope so.
Right. PM, you mentioned about COVID and whether we would be able to return to normal. We are, at the Business Federation, we are telling our members that you might not be able to return to the normal even post-COVID. Do you share that view?
I think it will take some time, and some time meaning several years, and there will surely be changes from where we were in the new normal. In the short term, I don't see us getting away from the precautions and the risks which are present right now overnight. It's not possible. Winter is coming in the Northern Hemisphere. Their cases are are currently continuing to grow. And even if you start having a vaccine by beginning of next year, by the time it gets rolled out to a significant proportion of the population and has an impact in slowing down the spread of the disease, it will be probably 2022. And so we must continue to be prepared for this kind of situation for some time. And I think travel is not going to return to normal next year. Maybe in 2 years' time, it'll be possible to extend in a bigger way, but that's down the road. So I think that it'll take time, and I think even after COVID is gone, there will be lasting changes. I mean, people have gotten used to working remotely, to meeting, to doing business online, to trading and buying things, making commitments online, and to being more, to traveling less. And I think those will be lasting impacts.
Did you feel that even at the leaders level, because you were all meeting virtually online,
Yes.
were you missing something?
For the meeting proper, it's not so bad because the meeting propers tend to be formal events and we each say our piece. So we, online or not, you listen to one another. But what you miss is the informal interactions, the chance to chat, a bit of corridor, serendipitous meeting when you just bump into somebody and you have a useful exchange and he pick up something useful, or you share a tidbit of information. Those human contacts, unfortunately, are lost.
Yeah, it's the same feedback.
And for the leaders whom you have known before, you're carrying on a relationship, continuing that is okay. But for the leaders whom you have not yet met, to get to know them for the first time, I think that's more difficult. I mean, I met Mr. Abe, for example, the Japanese Prime Minister, many times over the dozen years when he was Prime Minister. And now there's Mr. Suga, and I've spoken to him on the phone, but I've met him virtually at the ASEAN meetings, but I have not met him in person. And you do need to engage in person for him to know what you are like and for you to feel what he is like.
I think
and to become comfortable with one another.
I think it's the same perspective from businesses.
Yes.
Yeah, I think to sign a new contract or to develop a new business relationship.
You need the feel of the person. Can I trust him? Does he overpromise or does he overdeliver? If I sign, will I get satisfaction? If I run into trouble, will I have a reasonable counterparty? Very hard to answer these questions just by looking on the screen.
So do you look forward to a physical meeting next year?
Yes, I do, but I hope that there will be a good combination because not all meetings need to be physical. And I think in the old arrangements, perhaps we were traveling around the world more than was ideal. And then we could cut that back some. So you still maintain the contact, but perhaps not quite as intensely. That would be ideal.
I think we'll get to a nice compromise, I think, post-COVID.
I hope so.
Yeah. PM, I think if I may turn to the situation in Singapore, I think amidst this very difficult 10 to 12 months that I think Singapore has not done too badly. Our COVID numbers are very low. There's almost no community transmission in the past few days. We have the lowest fatality rate in terms of COVID in the world. And I think businesses are looking forward to reopening of the economy at the end of the year, hopefully, if not early next year. So, we are doing some of this job matching, and actually even hotels are rehiring, people in F&B are rehiring. So there's a little bit of buzz in the street now. I think this is coming at the back of a very robust response, I think not only by the Singapore government, but by many governments of actually putting fiscal support to workers as well as to businesses. I wanted you to, PM, if you could share with our audience Singapore's response, COVID response for our businesses and workers, and what drives those responses.
Well, first of all, a disclaimer. We don't claim victory. The battle is not over. We are taking it very seriously, and we're very aware that things can still go wrong very quickly. And all you need is one super spreader, and we'll be chasing our tails again. It can easily happen. But what we need to do is to keep up our precautions, build up what we're able to do in terms of testing, in terms of contact tracing, in terms of our systems to respond in case the cases grow again, and then be able to open up cautiously with precautions so that I can take steps one by one safely and not just take steps and hope for the best. And then become in a more normal state. The attitude we took from the beginning was that we do not want to let the disease burn through our population. We wanted to keep our population safe. At the same time, we knew that this would have a big impact on the economy, and therefore the government had to step up in a major way in order to preserve jobs and to make sure our businesses survive to the extent possible. And so we have taken very major fiscal measures, one budget package after another. This year we've had the main budget plus 4 more supplementaries, altogether 5 budgets. And we've spent a vast amount of money. We've taken not just money from what resources we have, but we've dipped into our reserves, into the piggy bank, and we've taken $50+ billion of past reserves, protected reserves, with the permission of the president, which we had to seek specially, in order to help pay for salaries through a job support scheme, in order to support companies, which particularly the companies which are in very badly hit sectors like tourism and travel, in order to have job growth initiatives, in order to subsidize companies to hire new workers for new jobs, and to look after also the self-employed people, because they particularly were very badly hit when COVID came. Many of them are tour guides, some are taxi drivers, some are freelance coaches, trainers, they may be entertainers, and they all desperately needed help. So the first thing to do was to keep body and soul together, and that took a lot of resources, and I think it has prevented a lot of hardship and kept the economy at least nose above water, afloat. Now that its situation is stabilizing, we cannot continue this very, very large infusion of government resources indefinitely, and we have gradually to tail this off and to get things onto a sustainable footing, which means that the businesses which are able to resume should resume. The businesses which need to transform or to pivot to a new orientation because it's a new normal and the old way of doing things won't work anymore, we will help you to do that. And for the few businesses which are likely to be in suspended animation for some time, like tourism, travel, then we will have to make special arrangements for them. But eventually this has to be sustainable, and we have to adapt ourselves for what is to come, rather than freeze a position which reflected what was pre-COVID.
Right.
Otherwise, we'll end up with zombie companies and an unproductive economy, and I think that will lead to more trouble for us later on.
Yeah, talking to our members, I think they are all deeply appreciative of the government support. But we in the Federation, of course, worry that this support is not sustainable going forward.
Yeah.
As you say, we've given 52 billion of our reserve to support. So we worry about the transition when those support is scaled down. We have no sense, PM, how many companies will fall out as a result of the transition?
Well, some industries are not doing badly. If you look at manufacturing, is doing quite well. In fact, we have growth in manufacturing this year compared to last year, even electronics, for example, or pharmaceuticals. If you look at the tech industries, they're doing well. IT, the tech companies like Google, Facebook, in fact, they are doing brilliantly during this period. And some of them have presence in Singapore. So there are sectors which are doing well. There are other sectors which will resume. There will be business, but it will not be quite at the old level, like construction, where there will always be a demand because there's so much of public construction which is necessary. You need trains, schools, houses, new housing estates, hospitals. They need to be built, and we have to get the industry restarted in a safe way, which means testing, which means segregation, it means additional costs. It means the government has to step in and help to do things, get things done as efficiently as possible, and we may need to adjust the cost structure as well. So there will be those industries which need specific attention. And then you have the ones which are, I think the ones which are most anxious are the entertainment and tourism business.
Right.
And we're trying experiments to see how we can allow the entertainment outlets to open up safely, but it's very, very challenging. Because the whole point of entertainment is that you go to let your hair down, whereas here we are trying to keep our guard up. And even if you have rules when you want to relax and have a drink and then sing some song or dance in an entertainment lounge, karaoke, it's a completely different mindset altogether.
Yeah, but I think we're aided by innovation in the sense of we have apps like contact tracing,
well, yes.
safe distancing.
So we have apps to track you, to track who's been close to you, to know if you to track the places where you have gone to, will know if you have been there. So that is helpful. But if in the place where you have been, you meet a few hundred people and then you are close to them and exchange germs with them, well, by the time I find out, even if I know whom you touched, a few hundred people are ill and I'll be running around.
But I mean,
it's happened in Seoul, it's happened in ski resorts in Europe, it's happened in pubs in London, it's happened at birthday parties and funerals in America. And it happened to us too. We had a Chinese New Year party, this at the beginning, at Safra Jurong, and suddenly outbreak, dozens of people from one event.
Yeah, but we are also telling our businesses that actually as much of their future can be decided by what they do themselves in terms of the safe management measures that they themselves put in place.
Yes.
Yeah. So that
I
being
think
a responsible,
they want to do this. I see a lot of businesses have put up the safe entry QR code so that their customers can check in and keep a log of what has happened, where they have been. I think that the businesses want to keep their own staff safe too, because if their staff are sick or are SHN or quarantine, it's very disruptive for them.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Prime Minister, we moved on to Asia Pacific, APEC. I think coming out from, a very successful ASEAN summit, and then over the weekend with the East Asian Summit, and of course culminating in the signing of the RCEP, I think the attention will now shift to APEC, as well as to the G20 as well. With RCEP, I think certainly as far as the business community is concerned, and that's really something that we cheered, because this is part of our recommendation, APEC recommendation to the leaders, that we must have deeper economic integration, and that FTAP must remain our goal. And one of the important pathways was RCEP. So with the signing of RCEP, and also with a change in the US administration to the Biden administration, what is your sense in APEC? Are we, my sense has been in the last couple of years that APEC is a little bit in what I would call personally as a suspended animation as well. Do you see
Well,
things coming back on track?
Well, the RCEP is a big step forward.
Yeah.
We've spent 8 years negotiating it, working on it. Finally, it's signed. We were hoping for 16 members, but we had 15. India decided not to join in towards the end. We are disappointed, but we hope one day India will join in.
Right.
Because it makes strategic sense for them, and I think in the long term, it makes economic sense for them too. But they have political considerations, and I can understand that, but I hope that they will find their way into it at some point. RCEP is an important signal that in Asia, the countries do want to deepen regional integration, do want to free up trade further, do want to work with one another on a plurilateral basis. That means in a group and not just bilaterally one-on-one. And it doesn't matter what happens in the rest of the world. In Asia, there is that determination to work together and to prosper together. I think that's a very good signal. For APEC, as you say, in the last few years, progress has been very slow. Mainly, one of the reasons is because I think the US approach has been that they want to deal with issues bilaterally rather than in a multilateral basis with multiple partners together in a group. And also, they have not been supportive of trade as a win-win proposition. I mean, the attitude of the Trump administration is that this is a win-lose proposition. If I have a trade surplus with you, that's good for me. If I have a trade deficit with you, that's bad for me. And trade is not like that. Trade is win-win. I may have a surplus with you, I have a deficit with somebody else, but it doesn't matter as long as overall it balances out. But that has been this administration's view, and this administration is still in charge until 20th of January. So I don't think that they are likely to change their position at this late stage, but we'll have to see how the new Biden administration plays it. I think they'll be more multilateralist.
Okay.
I think that they'll be more supportive of the WTO and of APEC. I'm not sure that they'll be more keen on throwing the doors wide open or joining the CPTPP, because that depends on domestic politics too. And once the restrictions are in, it's a very delicate matter, rethinking your position and deciding whether you want to go back to where you were or how do you move forward. So I think that will take a while, but I hope that there will be a more constructive approach, one where countries work together rather than against one another, and one where we aim to harvest win-win gains rather than treat this as a win-lose proposition.
What about the U.S. relationship with China? Because I think that is very important in deciding the plan. Yeah.
That's crucial. In terms of the overall tenor, I suspect that there will remain many difficult issues to deal with, because on both sides, in the US as well as in China, attitudes have hardened a lot in recent years. Many people in the US see China as a strategic threat to them, and this is bipartisan. And quite a number of observers in China think that the US is out to thwart their development and rise, and they are determined not to let the US stop their development. And so attitudes have hardened on both sides, whoever is in power in America, in Washington. But I hope that it will be a more coherent, systematic approach, one which will take into account a broader range of US interests, not just a trade balance, but also their overall relationship with China and the overall interest which the US has in the Asia Pacific and in the world, to be setting the standard, to be showing the way, to be playing a leading role as really the most powerful country in the world, playing a leading role, showing how the world can be a safe place for countries big and small. And taking care of America's interests does not mean having to ride roughshod over other countries' interests.
One of APEC's strength is the ability for like-minded countries, advanced and as well as not advanced, working together on common interests and issues. And to me, I think some of the important issues going forward as a result of COVID-19 is the collaboration that we can come together on the digital economy, and also things like safe travel. I think APEC provides that platform for you to do this kind of thing. Do you see that as important platforms for APEC and important priorities for the future?
I think these are important things for APEC to discuss. I'm not sure that we will make an arrangement which will involve all of the APEC participants, I think 21 countries, simultaneously. But APEC is a forum where we can talk about them, and then subgroups of the countries can come together and can work things out. The digital economy particularly is an area of considerable potential because as volume has grown, a lot of business is done there, then you need to have countries talking to one another to standardize rules, to standardize, to make sure the interfaces can connect with one another and we can transact with one another, and digital documents can be shared and recognized, and I can have information flows with rules regulated, what needs to stay within the country, what can be stored overseas, abroad. And so we have digital partnership agreements now being signed. It's important to set the rules there in a new area which is still growing, and therefore there is the chance to get things right, rather than to try and put right things which have developed and gone into a certain way over a period of time. So digital is important. I think travel is also important. You need rules. You cannot just go back to the old days where you buy a ticket today and within a few hours you get onto the plane and you turn up and you don't need a visa, and then, well, you have a weekend somewhere in the region or maybe you're across the world to do some business. You need agreements on what is safe, how to have corridors, how to have green lanes, how to have travel bubbles, how to do the testing, how to track, how to adjust your rules when circumstances change. For example, if you have a travel bubble with somebody and then I have new cases pop up or he has new cases pop up, well, what do? We can't be frozen, say the bubble is blown. I have to have some way to say pause, and I tamp down, I squeeze down for a while until things stabilize again, then I can open up again. So these are all things which need to be discussed, and I hope will be discussed in APEC.
One of the points that struck me when I looked at the ASEAN recovery framework documents that was issued as a result of the ASEAN summit last week was the emphasis placed on human security. That means protecting lives, protecting jobs.
Yes.
Do you feel that this is an area, because I think as businesses, to be fair, it's not really very high up in the business priority.
Oh, I think for the government it's very high up the priority.
Yeah.
Because really people need to be safe, need to feel safe, and then they can put their energies and their attention onto their work and their businesses. The business, of course, wants to keep their business going. But from the government's point of view, it has to be a balance, and keeping people safe and their jobs, as well as their health, as well as their families, is a very big emphasis. In America, that is one of the divides. The Democrats tend to emphasize keeping people safe from COVID and health-wise, and then the Republicans and their supporters tend to talk about the economy and keeping businesses going, even at the risk of COVID bursting out and it costing lives. And I would say on Singapore's behalf, I would come down on the side of making sure that people are safe and healthy and well treated medically. And then, having secured that, I make sure that I look after my economy. But we will not forget the businesses.
No, businesses are, in Singapore, we are all very looking forward with anticipation this air travel corridor. between Singapore and Hong Kong.
That's
which would-
a travel bubble.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, that's supposed to start, I think,
22nd of November.
That's right.
That's right. And most of the flights
are
have
booked
up
already. Yes.
So
I hope the cases remain low.
no, I'll be trying to advocate this arrangement for some of the APEC economy. So if we can do that, I hope we
Well,
can
it's
travel next year.
possible, but both sides have to be confident in one another, and the situation has to be quite tightly controlled on both sides in order for this to happen. If you have a difference, I have few cases, you have many cases, I'm afraid of you. If I have more cases than you, you're afraid of me.
Yeah.
So once you have that kind of a relationship, it's very difficult to open up. And even if both sides' cases are low, I mean, having been there before and experienced the trauma of a major outbreak, the population will be neuralgic and will be very anxious that if you open up, will that mean cases will come in and therefore put us at risk again? And we have to take this political reality into account. And it's not just a political reality, it's a very understandable human reaction. And we have to reassure people not to worry, we are moving step by step. There are some risks and there will be, likely you will see some cases, but we have to keep those, we are doing our best and we will keep those cases under control. And provided we can do that, then we can move a little bit further.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Maybe the last question I want to ask is really on behalf of the participants, many of the CEOs here. I think they are facing very much an uncertain future. It's still foggy and murky. What would be your advice for business leaders in this time?
I'm not a businessman. I hesitate to preach. But in this situation, I think you have to look forward, not back to what was, but look forward. COVID will have a very big impact on all kinds of businesses, some for the better, some for the worse, and make an objective assessment. What does it mean for your business and how can you best advance it? You may have to pivot, you may have to transform, you may have to right size. You will have difficult decisions to make, but take good care of your people and remember that your people are also stakeholders and are an important resource for you. And look after them during this difficult period. Don't just make a short, quick decision. I'm saving costs and I must drop so many headcount. But take care of them, retrain them if possible, redeploy them if possible. And I think they repay that to you and to your company. And in the process, we'll strengthen our cohesion and one day we'll prosper again.
Thank you. Thank you, PM, for giving this very important insight to our participants. I think you've spent this morning talking about an important subject for all of us. Myself, personally, I have a couple of wishes. One is 2021, I do hope to be able to travel. That's one. And I hope that we will rebound a lot stronger, particularly this part of the economy. And maybe my last hope is that APEC leaders get to meet physically in 2021. That would be my hope. I wish that these wishes will come true next year.
I look forward to that. I hope so too.
Thank you, PM.
Thank you.
Thank you.